Today, we're here talking about strengthening the pause before saying yes. My name is Amy Ballantyne. Welcome to Power to the People Pleasers. I'm so excited to have my guest, Karen, here. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you. Thanks so much for inviting me. This is awesome.
I am very excited to have this conversation with you. Uh, the idea of pausing before saying yes to everything is a habit that I want to help more people be able to do. And there's so much more that we're going to talk about in addition to this. I know this. Before we jump into that, I always love to get to know our guests a little bit more. Have you ever been a people pleaser? And if so, how did that show up in your life?
Well, I think many of us can feel as though we were people pleasers at some point in our lives or throughout our lives. We're social beings, and so we want people to like us. We want to feel included. I know growing up, I don't think my parents were really aware of it, but they had pretty high standards for us as kids. And so sometimes when you grow up in that environment, it becomes really important to achieve and to, be the good daughter and all of those kinds of things. So I think that's part of my upbringing, certainly, and some of what I've had to sort of unwind a little bit that I don't have to always try to get perfect, try to have everything exactly so that part of life is just recognizing our own imperfections and being okay with it.
Oh, I love that statement. Recognize our own imperfections and be okay with it because
Mm,
no one is perfect. No one, right?
that's right.
Oh my goodness, that's so valuable already. So I want the individuals who are listening to hear more about this fabulous Karen that is with me today. Karen is the owner and instructor for Yoga Moodra, providing online gentle yoga to individuals in midlife and beyond. Karen has a background in mental health as a clinical social worker and loves combining strength based mental health concepts with yoga practice. I love that. I'm so excited for us to dig into that. Yoga Mudra began after Karen experienced a motorcycle accident and found yoga to be a place for healing both physically and emotionally from her injuries. And Yoga Mudra has been providing accessible, gentle yoga for 17 years, where the classes are designed to improve body, mind and mood. So I'm excited to have you here and to jump into this very important conversation.
Thank you so much.
So let's get started right here with you got into yoga because of an accident, and now you're utilizing your clinical background as well to support people. I was curious when you talked about strength-based mental health concepts. Tell me more about that and how that supports individuals who have been people pleasing forever.
Right. Well, it's really something that comes out of my clinical training and tradition, which says that all of us have a lot of strengths and capacity. And most of us would just as soon work from those strengths as opposed to being told over and over again or having our weaknesses pointed out to us. None of us like that, right? So when we can say, yes, I'm really good at this and I'm really good at that, it helps just to shore up our self esteem, of course, but it also then gives us a place to work from, that's a place of strength as opposed to, oh boy, this is really hard for me. And oh, I've never been good at this. And all of that sort of negativity that just continues to pull a person down. So I always really liked working from a strength based approach. And I think that my yoga tradition and clinical background both say that, that let's work on getting stronger. Let's feel our own capacity and let's get in touch with where we might still need some work. But if you go right to where do we need some work, it kind of feels defeating and like, oh, and people kind of give up before they even start.
Yeah, and you know, I feel sad when that's the case, giving up before they even start when there's so much possibility. And I'm curious, talk to me about the pause before saying yes to everything for everyone, being that people pleaser. How can we strengthen that pause?
Right. Well, one of the things that's big in yoga
Yeah.
is breath work and simply getting into the present moment. And one of the most powerful pieces of yoga practice for me, both in my clinical work and just in my own personal life, is the idea of being able to soothe myself and to improve my own self regulation, to use a fancier term. So, we all have times and days where we're feeling pretty overwhelmed or exhausted or pulled in a million directions. And when we can gather ourselves and center ourselves on the breath, which is big into then, present moment. I always tell my yoga classes, you can't save up your breaths for later, and you can't take ones that you've missed. You can only breathe right here and right now in the present moment.
Mm.
And so it's just really good training for letting go of past, letting go of future, and really trying to be present and aware of what's going on.
Mm. And so in those moments, the people pleaser is, I'm a recovering people pleaser. In those moments where people put you on the spot to say yes to something, whether it's at work or extracurricular or home life. I had this happen to me yesterday, actually. What is your guidance to those moments so we can embrace the pause more?
Right. Well, I think taking a breath.
Hmm.
No one needs to hear an answer in the next half a second.
Hmm.
Sometimes
Yeah.
we put so much pressure on ourselves that, somebody asks me a question like, hey, tomorrow, could you volunteer to do so and so, whatever it would be. I
Hmm.
can always kind of just take a moment and breathe and even repeat back. That's just a good active listening skill. So you're looking for someone to volunteer tomorrow.
Mm.
It's another way to slow it down. So you're taking a breath, you're making sure you're understanding the request, and then you have lots of options.
Hmm.
You could say yes, you can say no, you can say, let me think about that, or can I get back to you later today? All of those kinds of things give you a little bit more time and space to really then decide, is this something that I really have time for, that I'm interested in, that I want to do? Or am I going to say yes begrudgingly and then be irritable and angry about it the rest of the day?
Hmm.
So, all of those little pieces can come into play when we're asked a question. And, I forget who it was that first said the phrase that you don't owe anybody an explanation, maybe Eleanor
Mm.
Roosevelt or somebody like that. But I think sometimes we over explain. People ask us for something and we have to have a reason or an excuse. If you
Yeah.
notice what I said, I talked about breathing, repeating the request, and then a possible response. I didn't say you have to come up with a reason or have, something else that's a conflict in order
Mm.
to.
Yeah, I really like that. And I was wondering, one of the things that I talk about with my clients is this idea of if you can ask for or share, I'd like to get back to you in 24 hours about that. Asking yourself the question, is saying yes to this aligned to who I want to be? It may have been who
Yes,
you were in the past, before right now, but is it aligned to who you want to be today, now, going forward? And I love what you just said here about, you don't owe them an explanation. You don't have to go into all sorts of detail on why you can't or why you're saying no. It's actually none of their business. It's if you choose to, great to suggest some alternatives and maybe be helpful that way. But really, this is where we get to step into our power.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
So I know when we talked, you have a idea, you have your own perspectives on using mindfulness practices for self-care. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Well, I think again, one of the things that happens to us as people is that we either spend a lot of time ruminating and repeating and going over and over past mistakes, things we feel like we didn't do well, things we wish we could redo, or we get busy with worrying about something that's future oriented, like how am I going to
Mhm.
manage this? And oh my gosh, what am I going to do about that? And one of the beauties of yoga practice is, again, really teaching that noticing and paying attention to the present moment. So when
Mm.
you're putting yourself in an awkward yoga posture, maybe for the first time, you need to focus on what your body's doing, or you'll topple over, or you won't quite
Mhm.
get it right. So it helps with focus, and everything I think that happens on the yoga mat is translatable to real life. So when you're breathing and getting in touch with your own flexibility, you're getting in touch with your own groundedness, your own sense of stability and strength. Those are all things then that you can take with you throughout your day and your week, because you can remember that sensation. And so much of our emotion is tied up in our body chemistry too. So the more that we can feel that in our own skin, the more that it's really going to make sense. We do a lot of talking and a lot of mental chatter about things, but sometimes we just need to kind of get it down into the body and say, okay, here we are. We're stronger than we think, and we are wiser than we know, and we can make a good decision and move from a place that's calm and focused and collected, as opposed to, oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
So, so I just think all of those things in yoga practice help us just kind of simplify things.
I love that.
There's a lot of yoga postures that are pretty elaborate, if you will, but they all start from very basic things like being aware of your breathing and being aware of body sensation and balance and all of those kinds of things.
I love that. I was curious, you you mentioned when we first met that there's an opportunity to settle down and let go of things that are getting in our way, as people pleasers or otherwise, that the yoga mat has made such a big difference. How has it made a big difference for you?
So for me personally, and I think probably for a lot of my students too, it's a time when you're practicing is sort of a time
Mhm.
away. It's time for you to focus on your own well-being, your own thoughts, your own feelings, your how your body's doing. And it's just a wonderful way. There's been many a time that I've gone into teaching a class where I've had a little bit of a tension headache, or I've been feeling kind of frantic myself because of the demands of the day. And it's like stepping on the mat and taking a few breaths. It's transformative. And I think so often we discount the breath. But as I always say, the breath is always with us. And most of the time it's automatic. We don't have to think about it, thank
Mhm.
goodness. But when we can bring our focus, right? If we had to think about every breath we took, we wouldn't
I
do
know.
anything else, right? But as soon as we can settle and do a couple grounded things like feeling the ground underneath our feet, maybe rolling our
Mm.
shoulders back and down so we have some space to breathe. I mean, you can do that in the grocery store aisle. You can do that driving in a car, just to sit a little taller and open up and take some deeper breaths. It doesn't have to be this big woo woo, close your
Mm.
eyes and spend 20 minutes. And really, after just 2 or 3 calming breaths, there's a real difference in terms of our physiology and just how we feel and how ready we feel to take on the day's
Yeah,
challenges.
I love that you brought in the examples of the grocery store and driving, because I absolutely hear those words to individuals who I recommend breath work or meditation to is I don't have time. You're already
Mhm.
breathing. If you can
Yes.
extend that breath slightly, if you can focus on the breathing for a few moments while
Mhm.
you're in the grocery store, you don't have to not be in the grocery store. It's not a either or, right?
Yeah,
Where
yeah.
that's a
Right.
limiting belief.
Right. And you're not like leaving your body or something.
Yeah.
You're right there, and it actually helps you to be a little bit more present.
Mhm.
You're like, "Okay, here I am in space and time."
Yeah.
And it's just a way to collect yourself and then move more deliberately. And I know for myself personally that it's when I'm feeling rushed and
Mm.
pressured that my tendency to get a little short tempered or irritable or not be as proactive and deliberate, that's when that kind of stuff comes into play, and then I'm not feeling so great about maybe some of my interactions
Yeah.
later. So the more that we can do that kind of pause and just kind of collecting ourselves before we respond, just leads to better outcomes in our own sense that we are moving through the day in a way that's lined up with our own integrity and our own
Yeah, I
values.
love that. I love that. You also mentioned this idea of having making deliberate decisions and tapping into how much energy do I actually have? So talk to me about these two concepts.
Well, I think day to day, and certainly yoga practice to yoga practice, it's all different. Some days we're tired, we didn't sleep well, we've got a lot going on. Some days we're feeling really, raring to go and full of energy. One's not better than the other. They're just different levels of energy. And I think if we can take a moment to say, boy, I'm a little depleted today. I didn't sleep very well. Need to just kind of be a little bit slower with my pace and just remember that I can only do one thing at a time. That not to get off on a tangent, but this whole myth of multitasking that somehow if we're doing multiple things at one time, we'll get more done. It's a myth. Our minds can't do more than one thing at a time. All we're doing is rapid switching, and that's exhausting. So to say right now, I'm doing this is a better use of our energy than going, oh my gosh, I better fold the laundry and do this and do that all at the same time. And then we just feel more
Yeah, I
frazzled than ever.
appreciate that very much. I'm curious, you were a clinical social worker before you found yoga, correct?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
so
yeah.
curious. When you were a clinical social worker, did you ever practice any yoga or do any breath work or have any of those connections? And if not, what might have been possible for you had you have had those tools?
Right, right. Well, I think my practice really changed as I started going to yoga. So I remember in my very first class, I remember it vividly. The teacher said at the end, he said, we're not only working on flexibility for our bodies, we're working on flexibility for our minds. And I'm like, "Huh? What was that?"
Yeah,
So that was my initial hook was, "Hey, there could be something
yeah.
to this." And then, my motorcycle accident happened and the healing process from that. But, really prior to my yoga experience, I did the stuff and there's nothing wrong with cognitive behavioral therapy and examining one's
Mhm.
own thinking and all of those kinds of things. They're powerful skills. But I think a lot of people, when I started incorporating more mindfulness, a little bit of breath work, like some just gentle body elements, people
Mm.
sought me out for that because they sort of knew either instinctively or because the other wasn't working very well for them that they needed something like that. And I always would say, I might bring in a little bit of yoga into our sessions. I'm not going to make you
Mhm.
stand on your head. We're not going to do anything that isn't comfortable and a choice for you. But most people said, no, no, I know that that's something that I need, and they really responded to having some time to just do a little bit of breath work, maybe at the start or the end of a session, just as a way to again kind of gather yourself. If you had a tough conversation, to come back to the body and say, "How
Mm.
am I doing?" Or before you start one, either way. So I think my practice did really change from being very into the
Yeah,
mental
yeah.
health aspects of things as opposed to a more holistic, if you want to call it that, approach
Very
to healing
interesting.
body mind. And that's why I named my company
Yeah,
Moodra, because I saw its benefits for mood. Mudra is the hand
yeah.
gestures in yoga, the seals. So that's a little play on words for me, just to kind of combine that mental health and
Oh, very
yoga
nice.
tradition.
You mentioned body work and mindfulness practices. For those people who are curious about what that means, can you provide it maybe one or two examples of the difference between body work and mindfulness practices?
Okay, so well, mindfulness at its very basic is just being
Mhm,
more aware and more aware of the present moment. When I was talking about before that a lot of us live in the
mhm,
past or the future, bringing it to, well, how's everything right here, this moment, in
mm.
this breath? That's really mindfulness tradition. So if I'm washing the dishes, I'm washing the dishes. I'm feeling the suds. I'm seeing the dishes getting cleaner. I'm stacking them over here.
Yeah.
That's all I'm doing. That's a mindful approach to an activity. Um, Body work, I guess, when I use that phrase, is really about using your body as an information point. Our bodies are very wise. Our bodies know what's going on. There's, books. Your body keeps the score. New work in trauma that says that a lot of our emotions can really reside and hang out in the body. I think that's why we have some of those, phrases that we use in day-to-day language. What a pain in the
Yeah.
neck. Well,
Yeah.
what, what is that? If he feels the weight of the world on
Mm.
his shoulders, right? So it's like we've always known that the body holds some of our emotional content because we've come up with those
Mhm.
kinds of phrases. But if we really break it down, then how does the body inform how we feel, how we move through the day, what we might need? How many times have we been like, I'll eat lunch later. I'll go to the
Yeah.
bathroom later. I'll stay up a little later. We put off what our body needs a lot of the times, and then we wonder why we're
Yeah.
feeling exhausted and depleted. So some of that body work is just saying, I need to treat my body well first and foremost so that I can function and be at
I
my
love
best
that.
every day.
I love that seeing the body information as valuable, similarly to how much value we're putting
Absolutely.
on other people's opinions and all of these things.
Mhm.
What about your own body information? That's really wonderful that you're talking about that. I'm curious, as you think about
Mhm.
the people pleasers who may be listening, knowing that, of course, I identify as a recovering people pleaser, and we're all on different spectrums of how much we're doing that behavior. Is there anything else that from Yoga Mudra, that would be valuable for you to tell us, the people pleaser or the recovering, that would be helpful for us?
Well, I think from a people-pleasing standpoint, I use this analogy all the time too, that if you're flying on an airplane, they always talk about putting on your own mask before you put on that of somebody else's. And for lots of different reasons that we could spend a lot of time on, we've been told that we're supposed to put everybody else first. But realistically, that just doesn't work out very well. We really need to be able to take time for ourselves so that we know what our capacity is, what our emotional and mental energy is on any given day, so that we can be at our best for other people. It's just absolutely critical that we take good care of ourselves, and then we can be a lot better and a lot more effective in our
Yeah,
daily
so
lives.
people pleaser or otherwise, this is an important topic.
Yeah,
Very
exactly,
important, right?
exactly.
Oh my goodness. Well, it has been truly a pleasure to have you today. I wanted to share that Karen has a free PDF, and we'll have the link in the show notes for those individuals, called 5 Reasons Why It's Hard to Try New Things. Tell us a little bit about that PDF there.
Well, what I hear so frequently is, "Wow, yoga sounds really cool. Oh, I should try that. I don't really have time." There's a lot of hesitation, and part of that comes from, Instagram, yoga journal, the pictures where people are in these very dramatic postures, and it so I started thinking about it and I thought, how can I help people sort of, untangle that? What it is that's holding me back from trying something new, even when I have a pretty good sense that it
Mm,
might be really good for me. And the very short answer is that our brains are set up with a negativity bias, and our brains like information, they like categories, they like to keep us safe. And so anything that's new is somewhat of a risk in our brain's mind
mhm.
idea. So I just tried to kind of unwind that a little bit in this article so that people could use it as a way to kind of examine when they have something new that they might consider. Sometimes, when the hair's standing up on the back of your neck, it's
Yeah.
doing that for a good reason, and you need to not do that thing. That's
Mhm.
good body information, as we said earlier. But sometimes it's just our own brain's negativity bias that's just a little in overreactive mode and working hard to keep us safe instead of kind of saying, oh, well, that's maybe something you could try and see
Mm.
how it goes. So that's really what the article was
Wonderful. Well, we'll
about and
make sure to
for.
link that there. And where can individuals find you
Thank
online
you.
if they're curious to learn more?
Well, I, of course, have a website, Yoga dash Mudra, Mudra spelled Moodra, yogamoodra.com. I'm also on Facebook and on LinkedIn if people want to have a look for me there. I have a blog that's attached to my website, and I'm working on a book and a retreat. I've got a
Yay.
lot of things going on, so hope people have a
Wonderful.
look.
Wonderful. It was
So
so wonderful to meet you and have you on the show today, Karen. Thanks for being here.
thank you, Amy. I've really appreciated it.
And
It's been
for
fun.
all of our listeners, thank you so much for tuning into Power to the People Pleasers yet again. Please stay tuned for the next episode coming soon.